One of the things that we've looked at AgCare since the farm was first initiated was small grain cover crops. This was seen initially as a way to try to protect young cotton plants, protect the soil from blowing. In those early days, the real challenges were weed control, and that was prior to the development of Roundup Ready cotton. And trying to control weeds in a no-till cover crop situation was very difficult. When Roundup Ready came along, that made it a lot easier. And really, our goals through the years were more at can we protect young cotton from wind and sand damage, and protect the soil, and really can we do that, grow a crop and make a yield that's equal or better than a conventional till. And I'd say through the years the yields have been pretty similar. A lot of times if you looked at the cotton in early June, it looked so much better in the cover because it was protected from the wind and the sand, but was all said and done, the yields weren't that much different. But when Katie started working down here, I think that really increased the efforts to really see what's going on there from a soil standpoint.
Yeah. So, to kind of reiterate what you said, I still think the primary goal of a cover crop should really be to reduce soil erosion, because, it's in that top couple inches really where we have the greatest nutrients, the greatest microbial activity is really what's going on in that top couple of centimeters. But yes, we've started looking a little deeper into the soil, trying to really figure out what benefits that cover crop is providing, or potentially what detriments it's causing to not see that increase in yield. And so we're looking at chemical aspects, physical aspects, as well as microbial aspects. And some of the newer things that we're starting to discover is that from these managed systems where we have a cover crop in place, that we are doing just as well as a native, if not better, from a biological standpoint. And so here recently we collected some soil samples from a native site that had an Amarillo soil series, the same as what we have here in the long-term sites. And from a biological standpoint, we are doing just as well in these managed systems, primarily because we are able to add greater residue to that system in a managed setting compared to a native site.
One thing that's concerned me, I guess, is the national issue of cover crops and soil health. And again, I think you have to realize that the Texas High Plains is a lot different from Iowa or Arkansas or Mississippi.
Exactly.
Because of limited rainfall. And you see a lot of claims that, I went to no-till cover crops and my organic matter doubled in 3 years.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's possible around here. And I think, the things we've seen in terms of improving the soil has been limited, and it's taken a long time to accomplish.
Most definitely. And so we can say that we have doubled our organic matter, but it has taken us 20 years to double it with a relatively high producing biomass cover crop. We're producing between 4,000 and 5,000 pounds of rye cover residue each individual year. And I think you bring up a really good point. We just don't, first of all, we have sandy soils. We're in a semi-arid environment. We aren't producing near as much residue in those areas where they're having 50 inches of rainfall precipitation a year, where they have the inputs to be able to grow a really high residue. And that brings up another point. I don't necessarily think it's always about the amount of residue that we're producing. Just because we're adding these large amounts doesn't mean that you're going to double your organic matter in a shorter amount of time. It's really about terminating your cover crop in an appropriate manner. And we have some research that we've been conducting the last 3 years looking at seeding rates and termination times. And what we've seen is it's not necessarily the seeding rate that increases your biomass, it's the termination time. Just extending that termination time by an additional 2 weeks, you nearly double the amount of residue. But with an increase in residue, we see a reduction in yield.
Yes, there seems to be a pretty strong relationship there between more residue, less cotton.
Exactly.
I think that's one strong relationship. Which to me is the problem on dry land. It doesn't rain enough consistently to produce consistent good dry land yields. And if you use a lot of that up growing cover, it just puts the cotton crop at a real disadvantage. One thing I read in a farm magazine a couple of years ago, there was a farmer in Iowa said the reason he liked cover crops is it dried the ground out so we could plant sooner. Well, I don't think anybody around here needs any help drying the ground out.
Most definitely not.
Again, I think we just need to look at things from a local standpoint.
Exactly.
With our environment and see what works things there and not just blindly accept what someone did in another state that gets a lot more rainfall.
Exactly. No, I think that's a great point. You really need to look at it even on a farm by farm basis and really figure out what works best, what sort of management practices you can implement. And then that brings up another point too, where should you go with a rotation versus a cover crop? And what we've seen from some of the work that we're doing here is that you are better off with a rotation. You can save that water for the cotton crop, or you can devote greater amounts of water to the cotton crop in, say, a cotton wheat fallow rotation. And you're still getting that benefit of the added residue, the surface protection from that residue as well.
Yes, but storing moisture instead of using it up. And I think that where that really fits is with declining water. If you're to the point where you really can't water the whole circle adequately, if you start a rotation there, you can concentrate your water on less acres, make better yields, and then take advantage of the rotation in terms of reducing nematode numbers,
Exactly.
cleaning up some weed problems, and just storing moisture for the next year. I think what we've seen down here the last, I would say 4 to 5 years averaged together is about a 25% yield boost where we're having a rotation versus either conventional till or the cover crop. And I think that's, most of that I think is from moisture storage, and also probably here help from the nematodes as well.
Exactly. And like I said, you're also adding that residue, so you get the soil health benefits that you get with a cover crop from a rotation as well.
But I think, and looking back on a lot of years of working in different cropping systems, there is no magic bullet. Everything has its strengths and weaknesses depending upon your water supply, where you're located and such. So to me, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Exactly. Yeah. Each farm needs to be managed according to what works best.